the problem happened, connection problem. So let me invite her again quickly. I'm really sorry. We have a kind of a technical problem. I'm really sorry about it. I'm really sorry. So let me invite her quickly. I really don't know why this happened.
We're back.
I'm really sorry about it. That's really the shame.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm really sorry about
well.
it.
You know, connections come and go. It's nobody's fault.
Yeah, sorry about it. This happens sometimes, but I'm really sorry. All right, so is it possible to talk about the things, the last part, like you were talking about your philosophy of teaching?
Okay, I'll keep it short because I think some people heard, but just in case.
Sorry about it.
No, it's okay. My philosophy is really very simple, and that's that the students learn. You know, yes, we've all, you know, we know about the various techniques. We know about the different types of frameworks, and that's great, absolutely. But of course, these things are useless if our students don't learn anything. So we need to make sure that they learn what we teach them, and most importantly, that they enjoy it, you know, because we have this same problem, you know, around the world where, you know, teaching English is approached like a subject, you know, something to get grades in, rather than a living thing. And we know this from, you know, Turkey is just one example. It's the same in Egypt. You know, students are doing, you know, exams like for hazırlık, you know, they just think, oh, I don't need the points, you know, boş ver, yapmayalım, geçmeyelim, you know, geçelim, you know, bana ne. And I understand that, you know, I mean, it's you know, students are already working really hard. So we need to show them that this isn't just something you study at school. Yes, points are, of course, important for university entry and whatever. But at the end of the day, it's a language, isn't it?
Yeah,
and it's something you can use. So I think this is where, you know, we have to engage our students to make sure that they understand that, you know, this is not just something to study and try and get the highest points for. So that's my basic philosophy. I can't, you know, I think it really should be as simple as your students learn, they enjoy it, and understand why they're doing it. What's the point, you know? So I think that's probably the basics.
The basic things. It's a good philosophy, by the way. It's a great one. It's a reality about it.
Simple.
Yeah, simple. Okay, thank you very much, Laura. So let's move to another point. I know that you have been working in Cairo for a long time, but when you think about it, your time in Cairo, what are the advantages and disadvantages of working in Cairo as an English teacher and trainer?
I suppose no more or no less than working anywhere else. The teachers in Egypt are similar to teachers in Turkey. You know, they work, many of them work under difficult conditions, especially if you're a government school teacher. Those problems are worldwide. You know, those are, you know, especially in, let's say, developing countries or countries that still don't get enough for the government, you know, for the state schools. So those problems are the same pretty well all over the world. You know, the large classes and, you know, the lack of support from government, or never enough money, let's say, and teachers are often working. And actually, I feel very bad for Egyptian teachers this year because after, you know, being online for months, now they have to teach face-to-face and work 6 days a week to catch up. Which is miserable. And that's the government schools, not the private schools, you know. So all teachers in Egypt now are doing 6 days a week. So they must be absolutely exhausted.
Definitely. It's like...
Yeah, I mean, doesn't it sound familiar? You know, I mean,
yeah,
you know,
sounds familiar.
Private school teachers end up doing more, don't they? You know, 5.5 days, 6 days, plus staying late if there are shows and all kinds of things. You know,
that's it.
Those things are the same, aren't they? You just go, yep.
All right.
Yeah. So I mean, no, it's very enjoyable to work here. It's just as enjoyable as it was in Turkey, for pretty much the same reasons. Teachers are all over the world are always great. They have their problems and issues like everybody else. But
it's great. Same. Thank you. All right. So maybe one day we can have a chance to visit Cairo and we can see.
Yes, oh, I think you definitely you'd certainly find it interesting. It's a very large city, even larger than Istanbul, which is already pretty enormous. Yeah, it's about 25 million.
Wow.
So big.
It's big. It's a huge city.
Yes.
All right. I see.
Like Ankara, it's desert dust.
That's different. Ankara is different. Okay, like Istanbul also. All right. So thank you very much for the ideas about the Cairo, Laura. So I would like to ask another question, which is, there are many approaches in ELT that we try to apply and that we follow it. But I just wonder, what is the best, not best, but what is the most suitable or the best one, let's say best approach for you to use it?
I'm still looking for that answer. I don't know. Because
us.
I think the problem is that, well, I suppose what you realize, and any teacher should think like this. I don't think there's anything wrong with thinking like this. I think that what you learn, the more as your experience continues, there is no one way to do this. Yes, we know about test, teach, test. We know about project-based learning. We know about, things like PPP, present, practice, produce, an old technique, but it sometimes works very well. Even grammar translational has its moments, if used carefully, used correctly. So we know about these techniques, but at the end of the day, I think nearly every teacher in the world who's aware of these techniques does a bit of mix and match, because for some things it's better to do a test, teach, test. For some things, it's better to do a guided discovery. And you might find that you use 3 or 4 techniques in one lesson, which is fine, because if those are if those techniques are helping your students learn, then you're doing the right thing. So I still don't have a favorite technique. I just find that I use what's appropriate for what I'm doing. If I'm doing grammar, then often guided discovery and test, teach, test are very, very useful for teaching adults. But sometimes with project learning, then project learning is actually often more effective as well. If you're doing flipped, there's so many ways to do things.
Exactly.
So I think there isn't one way, and I don't think teachers should feel guilty for not choosing one way. And I always get worried. Sometimes you get schools that say, "No, we only have this approach at our school," and I sort of think, "Oh, that means you're not listening to teachers and not letting the teachers use their academic judgment, because they know their students, and that's the most important."
Exactly, you're right. There is no we can say the best approach. Is which one is suitable, we should use it, as you mentioned. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. All right. So let's move to another question, and it's about the lessons. My question. So, what frustrates you during the lesson?
I suppose the same things that sometimes frustrate me during a training session is when students lose focus and start chatting in the corner. that might be my ego speaking, but that usually reminds me actually that perhaps maybe I was being, maybe I was boring, and they decided that it'd be far more interesting to chat about last night's football match. So that's my wake-up call, isn't it? If students are, I don't mind sometimes if students go back into their mother tongue, because, if you're teaching monolingual classes, this is going to happen. And more often than not, if they're speaking about something like they didn't understand a word or a structure or whatever, okay. If they're going on and on about the match or the latest, designer gear or whatever, I don't mind it for a minute or two, but after a while I sort of think, especially when you've explained something and you gave lots of examples, and then they ask you the same question again, and then that's when you usually sort of want to go. I think that's the most irritating, and it's amazing how many teachers do it too, as I found on CELTA courses.
I can imagine that about it. It's great. Thank you about it. That's very nice frustration. Okay, so let's move to another question. Thank you, Laura. And when I think about the countries that you worked so far, so how has your experiences prepared you for another country that you work?
Well, Turkey was actually very good preparation for Egypt, because culturally there are a lot of similarities. Okay, Turkey is more modern in terms of infrastructure. So Cairo in many ways is a bit like, Istanbul sort of 10 years ago. So some things are very, very modern here. They're sort of, super modern, flashy shopping malls, great big roads and whatever. And then other things like living, back in the old days. But because the cultures are closer than people realize, obviously because the Ottoman Empire was here for a long time, so there's bound to crossover. It's okay well, the British Empire was there as well, so so that's why we can find lots of English sweets everywhere. You go, oh, nice, thank you, Cadbury's chocolate everywhere. Very important. But yeah, but at least, I think, living in places like Turkey and living in places like Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, I think I've learned a lot about not being such a spoiled English person. So I don't expect things to always work. It's made me better at adapting. And I think this is also very good because people talk about comfort zones, and I think there's a lot of truth in that. Before I came to Turkey in 1987 as a teacher, I never knew what it was to wake up with no water in the morning, or power cuts. These things were virtually unknown to me. And that's important when you're teaching, because if you have a power cut, then you realize there's no point depending on your interactive whiteboard or something. Then you've got to get those flashcards out.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember teaching at a language school in Istanbul, and there'd be a power cut, for example, and the center would make us teach with candles because the students were there.
That's nice.
They were cancelling the lesson, and we had to teach by candlelight. So I certainly learned a lot. I also worked in a refugee camp years and years ago while I was in the north of Thailand, in a Burmese Thai refugee camp. Well, it was on the Burmese-Thai border. And I was teacher training. I was doing teacher training in a jungle with no electricity in a bamboo hut.
Nice.
And my bathroom was a river. So these are good life lessons. And it shows you that there is no excuse for being a boring teacher. You can teach anywhere, anyhow, and you don't need fancy equipment, I know teachers sometimes say, oh, but we haven't got this and we haven't got that. It's like, well, actually, you don't need it.
You need them.
The only thing you need any class as a teacher and some students, so the rest of it is down to you as a group. You can make it work. Teachers taught for centuries without data show projectors, without interactive whiteboards, CDs, DVDs.
Exactly.
So I think that these are good lessons. I still sort of, and I always remind people on CELTA courses, for example, because they might end up teaching in different countries. I mean, they're not always going to teach somewhere that's super modern where everything works. What's your backup plan? What do you do if it goes wrong?
We all need it.
Lesson.
You are right.
Yeah, that sound familiar?
Yeah, of course. We all need that backup plan, but definitely.
Plan B and C.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Thank you very much, Laura, for this nice experience that you shared with us. Okay. So as you know that after the COVID-19, when we back to the schools, we all, as a teachers, we all have lots of stress, and we have always, the under pressure at their workplaces, and still we have. What do you suggest to the teachers to handle the stress and pressure at their workplace?
That's a big one, isn't it?
Sure.
No, because this is a worldwide problem, and I was just reading an article an hour ago about teachers, in countries where they're still working online as well, which is also very stressful. And I think I agree that actually teaching online is actually more exhausting than teaching face-to-face. I found that when I started doing CELTA courses online. It was one thing doing them face-to-face, and then online it's, oh my God, 8 hours at a computer. Horrible. You know, it's a lot, isn't it? Because you're always on the screen. So yes, I don't think. I mean, this is a problem for all teachers, isn't it, worldwide, and particularly countries where the curriculum is overloaded. And this is a big one in Turkey, as it is in many countries. You know, this was always my pet hate. You know, teachers being asked to do too much without enough time to do it. And it is a problem. Teachers are always overworked around the world. So if you personally are feeling too stressed, you need first to, this is what I do because I am the queen of the last minute. I'm not the, you know, I'm organized, but in a last minute kind of way. Except when I'm doing certain types of courses. So if I'm doing a CELTA course or, you know, a sort of a structured teaching course, or whenever I did workshops and things at schools and courses at schools in Turkey and other countries, then I was super organized because I had to do everything in advance. So the first thing to do is the usual teacher thing. First, we blame ourselves because we always do. So have a quick, you know, think, okay, am I organizing myself properly? So, you know, sit down and sort of, you know, write your little list, you know, things that, you know, that take time, things that you need to categorize them into what's the most important, what can wait, and see how that works, you know, and start working accordingly. The next thing to do is talk to a friend, a trusted colleague, you know, because the chances are all the teachers feel the same way as you do, or many teachers do, but they don't want to say it because they don't want to look, you know, like they can't cope. They don't want to look weak in front of their colleagues. And I think this is a big problem with teachers because this is why we suffer burnout so much, because we pretend that everything's fine, and in fact, inside we're suffering like hell. And you know, and of course, this is a teacher thing, isn't it? We go into class and we have to leave our personal problems behind, and we go in happy, you know, and pretend that we live in la la land where everything is perfect. You know, this is one of the hardest things I think. Being a teacher, you know, we do sort of spend a lot of time pretending everything's great when it's not.
Exactly.
So, yeah, go to talk to a friend. You also have to sort of see, you know, whether you've actually been given too much and whether this can be shared. Because sometimes, well, actually, always, all over the world, even it's not even if you're a teacher. There are some people that end up getting more work than others because they are too obliging, you know. And one of the most important words that teachers need to learn is the word no.
Yeah, no.
Teachers, this, yeah, we don't use this word often enough, because we don't want to look as if we're being difficult or, you know, unhelpful. So we go, oh, yes, of course, you know, blah, 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 and the next minute we've taken on far too much. So, all right, before we say no, we need to talk to whoever gave us that extra work and say, okay, I'm willing to do this, however, I do have this, and this. Can you help me how to achieve this? Okay, then that throws it back to the head of English or, you know, whoever you're working with. Because sometimes, you know, managers deal out, you know, they dole out work without actually considering how it's going to happen, you know. And probably because they're being pressured by someone above them, you know, the movie or the, you know, the head of the year. And, you know, there's always somebody up above dropping things on you.
Exactly, exactly.
So I think sometimes it's often, you know, more often than not, it's better to ask that person, like, I do have this and this. Can you help me how to, you know, can you give me any suggestions as to how to do this? Okay, and of course, if pressure gets too much and your bosses aren't listening and they're not helping you, then of course that means you're going to have to make some pretty tough decisions.
Yeah.
We know from experience that's very hard if your children are at the same school because you can't leave. If you don't have kids at that school, it might have to come to that.
I see.
Now, I know because I've been through it myself. My last job before I went freelance, you know, became very unpleasant. I won't say too much more about it, but I suffered massive burnout I had terrible sleepless, terrible sleeping problems, and and I'd sit at home thinking, how late can I go into work? Because I'm trying to go in to spend the least possible time there because I was so stressed and unhappy that I knew that if I stayed there too long, I'd probably end up having a row, having a huge argument with the management.
I see.
So if I can just get in there, do my courses, and go home, then and that's the best way. That's when I knew it was time to leave. But like all of us, we're creatures of habit, so it's quite difficult to make the break. But when I did, I sort of, oh wow, why hadn't I done this before? It was one of the best decisions I ever made. This is a problem with teachers. We do get used, and we do have to look after ourselves. I mean, so if you're suffering, yes, sit and do those things, work out what needs to be done, talk to people, don't keep it to yourself. And sometimes just a little stroll outside, go walk away from your desk, just, if you can, it's not always possible, in your teacher's room, just walk out of the room for a few minutes. If you're lucky enough to have a school with an outside space, just a little walk around if you're around.
I see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the magic solution is, but those are the things that helped me.
Yeah, I see. Okay.
Hope they help.
Yeah, and probably they will help also. Thank you very much for nice suggestions, Laura. All right. I know that, let's move to another question. I know that you have, give lots of courses at Delta and Delta. Have you ever faced any difficult teachers to change their minds about teaching in your Delta and Delta courses and had an argument, something like that with?
Yes.
Probably yes.
Well, because teachers are a bit like students, aren't we? We like to think we know better. And to be fair, I mean, especially on CELTA courses, and when we used to do, Guthem will remember these days very well, we'd be asked to do trainer training courses for the ministry, or teacher development courses. We'd go somewhere in Turkey for a week, stay at a Öğretmenevi and do a week's worth of training. The program had been agreed, with Talim Terbiye. We'd have a meeting and, they would decide the program. But it was clear sometimes they hadn't really told the teachers. And teachers were sort of taken out of their classrooms and told to do this course for a week. Most of the teachers, bless them, they were really good about it. And they'd say, oh, thank you, we're really appreciating all the things that you're teaching us. But then sometimes you'd have teachers say, you don't know what it's like. We work in these terrible circumstances and we've got exams. How dare you take us away from our work? We've got lots of things to do. And, you'd have these sort of, terrible sort of, somebody would just let out. They would just blow. And you sort of, oh, right, okay. And train the trainer, of course, as Gufem will remember. I'm not the only one because Berno was with us as well. Sometimes it wasn't clear that the teachers who had come to be trained as teacher trainers, I think most of them were not really told. So we'd have to explain it. Gufem would have to explain it in Turkish to them and explain what their roles would be and everything. Well, of course, the trainer training course is quite a lot of work because they had to do something. Mm-hmm. Some of them would be very resistant and sort of, why are we doing this? The other teachers are on holiday, why are we here? Why are we working hard? I mean, it was okay if the Öğretmenevi was somewhere nice, like if it were Rize, so you'd have like a Gezi or something, or somewhere near the coast,
Yeah,
I think we
exactly.
had one in, yes. So in Muğla, we had one in Muğla, which is not that far from Bodrum. But then people were like, well, hang on a minute, there are teachers on the beach. It's not fair. Why are we here doing these courses? Which is also understandable. So on CELTA, because of course nowadays we get a lot of experienced teachers joining, whereas of course CELTA was originally designed for inexperienced teachers, but as it happens, more and more experienced teachers come to do the course as a refresher. So obviously you've got, you can have people on the course who've got 10, 15, 20, even 25 years of experience, who say they want to change, but then suddenly when they're on the course, it's like, You mean I'm not a fantastic teacher? What do you mean I talk too much? And my students love my English. They need to hear it. Like, no, 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 no. We want you to speak less in the lesson because the students need to practice.
Exactly.
Yes, we resistance is a big problem on CELTA courses. Most of the people are very willing to, adapt, and they try their best. But we always get one or two on every course who do take some convincing. And of course, with Cambridge anyway, you have a set of criteria, so it's not personal, it's not subjective. And we show them the criteria and so show what they're looking for. And we tell teachers to video themselves because, this is something that all teachers should do, whether you're doing a course or not, because when we're teaching, we can't see ourselves, can we?
Exactly.
It's only when we afterwards, you sort of go, oh God, did I really do that? So it's actually probably one of the most effective reflection tools. I know you're going to ask me about that later, but it actually tells you a lot because sometimes teachers are talking too much and the students are bored, or the teachers think that they're smiling and being friendly when they're not. They're actually doing this because they're concentrating. So when you watch the video afterwards, they're sort of like, oh, yes, oh, okay. Now I understand what you mean. So, we do get a lot of that on CELTA courses. People say, no, I didn't. I did this. Okay. What does the rest of the group think? And then other people say, well, actually, yes, you were talking a lot. So, yeah.
That's a nice moment. That's nice moments, Laura, really, really. But that kind of people, they are in everywhere, but not like in I think, it's not about like in teaching, like in education parts, in other parts, they're all.
And it's also, I always tell the other tutors, especially because I train up CELTA tutors quite often. I said, look, you've got to remember that they've already made a very brave step to come to the course after teaching for so many years. And you're asking many teachers to turn their teaching experience, on its head. So it's actually, we should respect those teachers for actually signing up for the course in the first place. So even though some want to tear our hair out and they're driving us mad, we do need to remember that they took a very courageous step. So to be empathetic to that, respect it and empathize with them.
I see. Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Thank you. All right. So let's move to something related with this topic. As we know that reflection is really actually having a very important part in our teaching and sometimes in learning too. So in this case, why is the reflection important for teaching and learning?
Well, it's to help you improve, basically, because it's not always easy when you've got a full teaching timetable. It's easy to say and another thing to do. Let's be very honest about this. But it is good to sit down and think about what you're doing and why you're doing it, because that's how you improve as a teacher. And this is why, as I mentioned earlier, recording yourself, because, it's not like when we started teaching, the technology was pretty limited. But now, because we have smartphones, we can stick it on a tripod, depending on the school's regulations about recording students with permissions. But there are lots of things that you can do to record yourself. You've got your phone, you can use your laptop, you can use your tablet. And this is one of the quickest and most effective ways to watch yourself, as a teacher. And give yourself something to work on, if you think you're particularly weak at something like teaching vocabulary or teaching grammar, then record yourself a couple of times and look at how you do it. And then this will give you a sort of an idea of how well you're doing it and what you work on. Could you use another technique? Could you use different materials? And of course, another great way to sort of, help you with that is peer observation. Ask your trusted colleague where possible, because sometimes you're teaching at the same time. Peer a friend. This is a lovely one to do, but it's quite difficult to do in reality. Say, look, can you look at, watch my classroom management? Am I organizing my class well? Am I shouting when I shouldn't be? Are there better ways that I could use to organize my students? So I think these things we do need to sort of sit down and, write down things that we would like to work on and give us mini goals. And not, be too hard on ourselves. If you say, okay, this semester I'm going to work on 2 things, for example, my classroom management and the way I teach vocabulary. And I'm going to, find 3 new techniques to try or 2 new techniques to try. It can even be 1. It doesn't have to be, anything huge. But, sitting down and sort of, mind mapping, brainstorming a lot of things you want to work on and going bit by bit can be enormously useful because that's how we improve. This is why on CELTA and Delta courses, you have to write pages of, how things went and what you'd like to work on. But of course, in the real world, we don't have to like that. But it's good to do that, and talk to your colleagues. I mean, because again, with teachers, we sort of try to pretend everything's fine, whereas many of us are sort of, we suffer from self-doubt. It's a teacher thing. We're always punishing ourselves. Oh, I'm a terrible teacher. I didn't teach this properly. And beating myself, it's like, no, we're humans and we're just trying to do our best. So yes, reflection is probably the only way to move on, and there are lots of things that you can find online that can help you reflect and brainstorm with your colleagues or on your important. That's why I'm okay. Did we lose each other there briefly?
Okay. Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So thank you very much for the suggestions about reflection, Laura. All right. So let's move to another question. So it's about the effective language teachers again. Can you tell us 5 adjectives that describe an effective language teacher?
I suppose they apply to all teachers, really. I think there has to be passion. You've got to love it.
Passion.
You've got to be hardworking. Teaching is hard work.
Exactly.
That hasn't.
2.
Wherever you are in the world, teaching is hard work. So you've got to be hardworking, willing to put in the extra. Caring. You should care about your students.
I see. That's 4, I think.
So we have that. And willing, I suppose, adaptable, ready to change. Yeah.
Okay, 5. Nice one. 5 great adjectives for us. Thank you very much. All right, so let's move thank you very much for the adjectives, Laura. They're really important for effective teachers. Okay, so next question is, again, it's very actually fun questions. Like, if you could have 1 superpower to use in the classroom, what would it be and how would it help?
I think if I could if I could wave a magic wand and sort of, what's the word? Manipulate education ministries to do what they want.
That's nice. That can be really nice.
A great dream of removing homework around the world, because a lot of the homework we give to students is pretty meaningless. Well, in Turkey we have the gap-fill disease, don't we? Fill in the gap. And in Egypt, we have the multiple choice disease, you see. Every country has a disease.
Unfortunately.
It's just painful, isn't it? So I think that would be my superpower, the ability to influence ministries to, get rid of silly exercises that have limited value, Because most homework has very little academic value, and we need to give more meaningful homework. There's lots of websites you can find now and different ideas for doing that. Especially if you're doing project-based learning with kids, that makes it a lot more meaningful. Flipped classroom, flipped learning, and things like this. But, I always tell, many teachers in Turkey know this because I've told them many times. In my primary years, very long time ago when the dinosaurs were flying around.
No, of course not.
From the age of 5 until the age of 11, we didn't have a single piece of homework.
Yes, that's very nice.
Yeah, And I went to a government school. I didn't go to a fancy private school, but yeah. And, you know, of course, the kids that went to school with me were the same. And we looked forward to going to secondary, you know, high school, because they had homework and we thought it would be cool. We soon learned that it wasn't. But the bottom line is those 6 years without homework didn't hinder our academic development. We all went to good universities. So
that's the point, I think, huh?
exactly. You know, does it really help? As I said, it's back to the quality of the homework we assign, not the quantity. You know, when we've got little kids in Turkey with backpacks that are bigger than the children, you know, it's heartbreaking, isn't it?
Exactly.
When you see around the world, you know, you see, oh, those poor little kids, you know, those enormous backpacks, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Stuff that they don't need to do. They could be out playing or something.
Yeah, most of the time.
So, yes.
Their backpacks are heavier than them. Really?
Yes, exactly. It's like the kid weighs 30 kilos, the homework weighs 30 kilos.
Yeah, definitely. All right.
It's nuts.
It's not fair, but we can't change it.
It's not easily. It's
Yeah.
going to take a long time.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We
sure.
still need time to change it, I think.
That's why we need superpowers.
Yeah, exactly. We need your superpower. All right. Thank you, Laura. Okay, so.
I have my magic wand.
Oh, that's perfect.
I get better.
Nice. All right, so let's move to next questions. And probably you have lots of challenge this year. You have Facebook. What was the biggest challenge that you faced this year?
It wasn't so much this year. For me, it was last year, especially when we had to go from teaching and training face-to-face to online.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we were told, you know, especially when the pandemic was at its highest, I'd say that, in fact, not this year, but the years before that, you know, let's go from sort of, you know, 2019 and 2020, where we were suddenly asked to, Cambridge said we weren't allowed to deliver CELTA courses face-to-face. They had to be online. But of course, nothing was ready. So all the trainers and tutors around the world were all like, how are we going to adapt all this stuff to online? So we'd be sort of, you know, working our bits off, trying to change our sessions and organize teaching practice online and all these things. I mean, okay, I had done some teacher training online, but not teaching practice. I haven't observed teachers teaching online. So that, I think, for me personally, was a major challenge, because, you know, doing a few training courses online, you know, for a few hours once or twice a week is one thing. Doing 5 days a week from 9 till 6. Okay, we have breaks, but still, and having to adapt to all our materials and to work online. And I'm sure this was the same for every teacher around the world, you know, because the stuff that we use in class, suddenly we can't use, can we? Or
Yeah,
we have
you're
to change.
right. Exactly.
You know? And nothing was ready for us in most cases. We had to do it ourselves, I think. I'm sure my situation wasn't unique. I'm sure that lots of teachers around the world would say the same thing. And from the various Facebook groups I'm in and those things, it seems like most teachers are in the same boat. So,
Probably.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
Okay. So let's move to another question. Actually, we just have a couple questions left, not much. And the time is running really, you know, passing really quickly. All right.
It's right, so I'm just rearranging something. There we go.
Sure, I can see that. Your battery.
Yes, so I had my power bank nearby, ready.
I see. Wonderful. All right, so let me ask you another question, Laura. When you think about the 5 W's and how, like who, what, where, when, and why, and what questions come to your mind about the LT world?
I still find that one difficult to answer, but I suppose if you go with the what kind of a teacher do you want to be? I would say I'm looking at it from the teaching point of view, and when do you want to achieve that? You know, sort of, have you got a goal for the next 6 months, the next year, the 2 years? Because obviously for some of us, you know, we're happy to teach all the time, which is absolutely fine. Some of us would like to teach, for example, different levels, different age groups, because I found that enormously helpful, because when I first started teaching, I only taught children, you know, taught a summer school with children and then taught adults. But since that time, I've had the chance to teach like exam classes, IELTS, EAP, different ages of kids, different countries, which was great. So I think it's very important to stretch yourself. So, you know, where do you want to be? I mean, you know, do you want to be a teacher trainer? Do you want to be a senior teacher, you know, whatever the title is? Do you want to be a head of department? So these are all your whens. And the how you're going to do it is the next one, isn't it? You know,
Exactly.
That comes back to goal setting and planning. So we've got where. So yes, I think, did I answer sort of where do you want to be? Okay, all right. What was the other W that I
and
forgot?
why?
Yes, why? Yes, what do you want from this? Yes, it's the why, isn't it? Why do you want to do this? You know, what do you expect to get from it? I think that applies. I also apply these to lesson planning, you know, sort of what are you teaching? How are you going to teach it? Why are you teaching it? Where do you want your students to be by the end of the lesson? I think I was glad that you included them, because I had to think quite a lot. So I was thinking, how do I answer those questions? So the hows, I also think we need to sort of, you know, think about how to find resources and things to help us. I mean, that's the good thing about being a teacher these days. There's so much around. The publishers are our best friends, you know, British Council websites and things like this. So there are lots of ways to achieve those things.
I see. Thank you very much. Thank you, Laura, for the end, for your nice questions about it. All right, so let's move. I'm sure that, Laura, you have read lots of things about ALTs. And what can you suggest us to read about ALT?
Well, there are some books that are always useful. Well, again, this comes back to whether you're teaching adults. I mean, things like, you know, there are some old staples that haven't changed, you know, like Learning Teaching, the Scrivener books, things that, you know, from Scott Thornbury, you know, Uncovering Grammar. For people who are teaching, especially, you know, adults, and maybe if you're teaching at university, things like the lexical approach. You know, these books aren't new, but they're very valuable. And it's important that we do familiarize ourselves with these approaches, because they tell us a lot about the way we teach grammar and the way we teach, you know, lexical items and so on. For children, things like, you know, Learning English by Jane Moon. Basically, anything written by Carol Reed, who is the goddess of young learner teaching. You know, people like Sarah Phillips, Carol Reed, if you're teaching primary. It's also a very nice Cambridge book by Cameron, which is also very, very useful. And anything in the How to Teach series.
Yeah, that's it's really nice.
That's very useful. And I would say, and again, the publishers' websites, I mean, the publishers are amazing. They provide so much useful material. You know, you think of the, you know, like Oxford Teachers Club and things like this. The British Council actually had been quite a lifesaver, because they produced a lot of online ready-made lesson plans. You know, so there's a lot of stuff there. You know, it's not like when we started teaching where, you know, there were hardly any resource books. Well, there were no resource books in the 80s, I can tell you that. We had to make all our own materials. So, you know, you've got so many things that you can read, you know, and amazing websites like Edutopia, Future Learn, you know, so you don't just have to read them. You know, there are things that you can find online that are incredibly useful. Future Learn's amazing, isn't it? It's free. You can do courses, just pay for the certificate. So all of these things are incredibly useful.
I see. Thank you. Thank you very much, Laura, about this. The suggestions about the reading. Each of them are really precious to read. Okay, so let's move to this question. Is maybe think about it. It's out of the topic, but I'm gonna ask you. Let's think that we finished the interview and you step out the office and find a lottery ticket, ends up winning $10 million. What would you do?
Do a happy dance around the living room for a start. I mean, it's always a difficult question to answer, isn't it? We all have our ideas. I think nowadays, though, I'd like to see that money. I keep a little bit for myself. Okay, I'll be a bit selfish because teachers are very
No
bad at being
problem.
selfish. I'll learn to be a little bit, ubud. So a little bit for me, but really I'd like that money to go to some kind of foundation to help, government school teachers or teachers teaching in difficult situations around the world. Because these are the teachers in any country that are often the most neglected.
Yeah.
It's okay when you work at a private school because you get lots of visits and lots of courses. And you have lots of facilities, I know that teachers often have to work very hard, but usually, in a government school in a developing country, you get the least of everything, You don't get all the publishers coming to you. You don't get all the, they do come, but they don't come as often because there's usually so many schools to cover. They can't cover them all. So It's no disrespect. So these are the people who need the most help and the most support, and who often get behind. Yeah. So that would be my solution.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Very kind of you. Thank you very much, Laura. All right. And here it comes to the last question of the session. Ready for it?
Go for it.
What is your motto?
Life is short. Enjoy it.
Nice. Great.
Isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So true.
Yeah. And that's the same with your teaching. Enjoy it. Because if you're not enjoying it, then go and work in an office and, or go work at a bank or something.
Yeah.
Please, life is short. And we've realized this more than ever with the pandemic and everything.
You are exactly right. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's all from my side, Laura. Thank you very much. But before ending our live session, Laura, would you like to add anything else to this lovely session?
I think you asked all the most interesting questions. I was very impressed that you sent me a list of all these questions. Wow, that's really well thought through. I'd just like to say thank you ever so much for inviting me. Because, as I said, it was very interesting to watch all these teachers and trainers, coming up with their stuff. And then I was sort of thinking, oh God, when you invited me, I was like, oh my God, have I got anything to say that would be useful to anybody? I'm not sure, So it was very nice. It's nice to reconnect with Turkey. So you've been my gateway to back home, because of course, because of the pandemic, I haven't been able to come back as I'd planned.
I see.
So inshallah, one day it'll happen. It'll happen. Yes, inshallah. Yes, I think that's probably the most important word we use nowadays, isn't it? It's inshallah. We can't make any plans. We just hope.
Hope, yeah. We hope so. We hope so. Do you miss Turkish food?
Sorry?
Do you miss Turkish food?
Yes. Well, I can make some things myself, and we do have a couple of good Turkish restaurants. There's one called Bosphorus, and there's actually quite a good one where I live in a place called Heliopolis, which is in Cairo, obviously. It's sort of not downtown, but it's in the middle. So in one of our shopping malls, we have quite a decent Turkish restaurant. Still, some things aren't quite the same. So I do need to come to Turkey and taste the real thing. Because what I would do for an Iskender kebab, I mean, that's one of my...
Yes. Delicious.
That's a real, Turkish thing that as I say, nobody seems to make outside the country. It has to be in Turkey.
By the way, we have a question. Someone is asking a question, Laura. We have to just let me look at the question.
Oh.
Will you hear the session? Yes, and I will share. The question is will you share the session video in your account? Of course. I saw that comment about it. Yes, I share all the sessions on my YouTube channel and Facebook and LinkedIn and also IGTV. You can watch the session again and again. And I do suggest you to watch this session again, and you can listen and Laura's precious comments and suggestions here. All right. So I just wanted to say, yes, Laura.
No, thank you again, because this is my first time doing something on Instagram.
Yeah.
I didn't know you could do this on Instagram. I've been using Zoom and StreamYard and a whole load of other things. So thank you for this, Volkan, because I didn't even know that this was possible.
Yeah, it is possible. No need to prepare lots of things. No PowerPoint or no kind
Yeah,
of things about it. Just you and me.
amazing.
That's it. And our listeners.
Lovely. It was amazing. Didn't know that Instagram did that. I thought it was just for posting pictures of your food and your
No, this is
clothes.
also there's also other good things with Instagram. All right then. So that's all from the teacher talks tonight. And Laura Woodward was with us with her excellent suggestions and advices, or especially the most important thing, her time. She spent her time with us. That's really important. And thank you very much. And we are going to be here next week at the same time on the same day as that teacher talks time and date. And until that time, take care of yourselves and everybody wherever you are. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And until next time, take care of yourselves and peace, everybody. And bye-bye. Bye-bye, Laura.
And a happy new year in advance.
Yeah, happy new year. Yeah, thank you.
See you.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Thank you again, Volkan.
You're welcome. Bye.